Hey everybody, James here with Laughing Dragon Foundries. So today we are going to be talking about supports, why they're so important, how to do them, and how to do them right. How you doing? Fight! So we have a couple of different types of plates depending on how your printer is set up. If you have a glass plate like this, or just a straight aluminum plate with a coating on top of it, then you'd want to use a spatula to go ahead and gently scrape your print off of the plate. It's actually called carborundum. I'm not really a huge fan of this. I think they changed the formulation, so that's why I don't use these as much anymore as I do the flex plates. All you really have to do when the print is finished, if it doesn't come loose by itself, because sometimes when it cools down it will, all you have to do is just give it a flex. Make a little satisfying crackling noise for those of you who are into that sound, and your print comes right off. Even if you're a newcomer to the printing world, you've probably encountered this guy. This is the Articulated Dragon by the artist known as MacGyver. If you actually want to take a chance and get the model and print it for yourself, the link will be in the description of the video. But this is what's referred to as a print-in-place model. So what does that mean? Well, it pretty much means it's set up from the very outset to not need supports in order to print. Now there's a bunch of different models out there that you can print without supports very successfully, and this is just one of them. So this is another example of an articulated model for print-in-place printing without supports. This is the Rose Dragon by Cinderwing 3D. Again, the link for this one will also be in the video description if you want to take a chance and print one for yourself. By contrast, this is an example of a model that does require supports. The purpose of supports is any incline or angle on your model faces that you're printing that are typically over 45 degrees, you're going to want to put supports. And the reason is because when you're printing the filament out of your nozzle, that filament is hot. Okay, it's not stiff and rigid. It needs something to hold it up in the position where it belongs in order for it to maintain the shape that it should. And that's the whole purpose behind a support. I typically set my supports anywhere from 35 to 45 degree angles. And in doing so, you can see this is what you get on a model like this. So there's a number of slicers that you can use to do this. Obviously, a slicer is the application that you use to prep your 3D models for printing. And there's Cura, there's Simplify 3D, there's Prusa Slicer, there's Idea Maker by Raise 3D, just to name a few. Let's take a look at this model in Simplify 3D and see what kind of supports we have on it, and also just kind of give you a cutaway view of what to expect when you put the supports in. As you can see here by the model on my screen, we already have supports that are set up in this model, okay? I'm going to flip it over so you can see the bottom of it as well, and you can see where these supports have been placed. Now, you'll see that there aren't supports in this area over here, and the reason is because that angle of the angle of that model is less than 35 or 40 degrees, which I've told you before is about where I set my threshold for supports. All right, so let's go ahead and process now for printing, and I'm going to bring up my process settings because I want to show you something here real quick before we actually slice this model. I'm going to click on the support tab here, and you'll see that we not only have supports set to a 30% infill, and then we have what's called dense supports, all right, which are set at 70%, 3 layers, top and bottom. And when we slice this model, I'll show you why that's important. So let's go ahead and click Prepare to Print. So now what we have here is a sliced preview of this model. This is the code that would then be sent to the printer to go ahead and print this model in 3D space, all right? Now I have a slider down here at the bottom that we can pull to the left in this case and kind of do a cutaway of the model all the way through the different layers. We set our infill to 30%, but if you look at the supports at the bottom of this model, they're actually a lot more dense than that. Remember the 70% on the dense supports? Here's why. Setting a density higher than your internal support percentage allows you, on the very bottom of the model, creates a dense layer or a dense couple of layers of supports to actually act as a raft without printing a raft. Now, for those of you that know what a raft is a way to print a thick layer of plastic in multiple layers, and it pretty much acts like what its name implies, and that is it's a raft that gives you a better adhesion to the bed, and then at the same time provides a surface that the supports and the model itself would stick to more easily than directly on the bed. So if you're having adhesion issues, printing a raft is not necessarily a bad idea. However, it takes a lot of extra time is put onto your print, and it takes a lot more filament. So this is a nice trade-off between the two. If you print with a dense couple of layers below your supports and below your model, again, it will act like a raft in principle. So as we move the slider to the right and come up in layers, you'll see now, as we print the model, you're going to see these dense layers now on top of our regular 30% support infill percentage. Let me get a little higher here so you can see this, and I'll explain what's going on. So out here you can see that we've got our infill support percentage at about 30%. It's a good trade-off between stability and good support for the model. I'll zoom in a little bit here, and I want you to see something. I'm going to back this down just a little bit. So here we have our 30% infill on the supports, and as we come up, you'll see it starts to build a bridge with those dense supports. Now the purpose of that is because when we start printing the model, which again is the blue and the green lines here, it actually provides a much cleaner surface, much better support across those dense supports for your model to print. We'll go ahead and cycle through the rest of this model, and you can see as the supports are coming into play, how the dense supports are formed over top of that 30% layer, and then the model continues to print upwards until we get all the way up to the final bit at the top. Again, same thing here. Let's zoom in here so you can get another look at this. All right, so we've got our 30% support layer right here, and as we continue up, you can see these dense supports coming into play to create that much smoother surface for the bottom layer of your print to print across, which should provide a much cleaner presentation of your model. Final thoughts. Take up another hobby. Get out while you still can. You've got the models that don't require supports, which are great, and the more these types of things that you can print, obviously, the better. I mean, if you can print something, if you can figure out a way to print something without any supports, that's the ideal situation. A lot of models are going to require support. Some models print with a huge amount of supports and using almost as much plastic as the actual model itself. Here's an example of that. This is the Ronin samurai mask, one of the masks that we carry, and there is just an inordinate amount of support material that's being printed underneath this mask. And a lot of your slicers actually, as I said before, have the ability to create what's called auto support, so they can kind of get you started. But I will tell you that in most situations, you're going to want to fine-tune your supports. And then if your supports are set up correctly, they come out like this. And there you go. That's a subject for another day. James here with Laughing Dragon Foundries. Keep your filament dry and your hopes high, and we'll see you on the next one.